Ledbetter lessons.
Okay, so we're going to finally now get into creating our Pong game. So by the end of this tutorial, we should have at least one paddle moving up and down, if not two, by the keys that we're pressing. Now to start things off, we'll go down here to choose a backdrop, and we want to choose that XY grid again. Okay, so now we can kind of see what we're doing. Now we don't need the cat, so let's delete that, hit the little garbage can, and we will delete the sprite. We want to come down here to choose a sprite, and we want something that looks like a Pong paddle. So to me, button 3 looks kind of like a Pong paddle. So we click that, we bring that in, and what we notice right off the bat is the paddle is facing the wrong way. We want it to face, it's facing like up or down. We want it to face left or right. So how do you do that? How do you change the direction? Well, there's a little direction area down here in the info panel. So with that, we want to click on our direction, and we want it to either face directly up, so that's 0, or face directly down, which is 180. All right, so now our paddle's facing the right way. So that's pretty cool. Now, if we come up here to costumes, I'm going to show you a quick little thing that needs to be fixed. So if you click on this part of the sprite image, this part here, you see right in the middle of this, you see the little crosshairs, the little cross. Well, that needs to be lined up with the pivot point of the sprite, right? So the pivot point is this little black crosshairs in the middle. So line that up, because that is where our XY is going to be, like if we set it. So I'm going to show you something here. So if we come over here to the X, I put a 0 in here. Now you see how that's kind of lined up. Actually, you know what we could do is we could do a little line right here. So let's say that that's going to be our line. We'll make our own little crosshair that we can see. Okay. And now if it's kind of in the center. So now you can see kind of how that is, right? But if we had our image off to here, like this, we see that when we place it at 0, 0 coordinates over here, you see how we have a 0, 0, which should be the center. That's actually where our little crosshair is over here, but the sprite actually isn't in that location. It's off-centered. So that's what we want to do. We want to fix that so that our sprite is directly in the center. So to do that, like I said before, we'll let's drag the back part first, line it up in the center. Whoops. Line it up in the center, and then we'll grab this one, line it up in the center. And now you know for sure that the center of this object is where the pivot point is. And we'll do that also for the button. The second one, just in case you want to like change it around and have two different colors for our paddles, we'll do that. Okay, so now it's perfectly centered, which is exactly what we want. I don't know if I'm going to worry. I'll delete these. So to delete them, you can just hit the delete key like that, or you can hit the delete button up here. After it's selected, hit delete and it's gone. Okay, so let's go back, click our code over here, and let's start programming this paddle here. So drag it over here to the side, like so. Because I think it's a little bit wide, and I don't feel like going in there. You can go in there and edit the sprite if you want, but I think just being a little bit off the screen is fine. We'll have our Y set to 0, and let's start making our first script. So as we said, every script starts with an event. So that's kind of what kicks off the code block running. In our case, we want the when flag clicked. So when someone clicks this flag up here, the go, it is going to tell this to start running. So it's kind of what kicks off this event to run. Now, every frame, I guess that's something else we need to kind of discuss, is that what you see here is constantly refreshing on the screen. So about 30 times per second, this keeps redrawing itself. So every redraw, we want to check to see if a button is pressed, and then we want to move accordingly. So since it's something that gets done over and over and over again, we want to come down here to control, and we want a forever loop. Now what a forever loop does is it will keep running the code inside of it, the code blocks, over and over. So once it gets to the bottom, it'll go back to the top and run it again. So we want that. Now we want to see if we're touching something, right? So that's this next block here. It's an if. Now these are really important blocks and really powerful once you get programming more. Basically what an if does is it will run the blocks inside of it only if what we put in this little hexagon block area is true. If it doesn't evaluate to true, then it won't run this. It'll just skip and go below. So we want to see if, and we want to see if we are pressing a button, basically, right? So to check for if we're pressing, it's kind of like sensing if we're pressing. So let's click the sensing area here. And you'll see this one here called key space pressed. So it has a question mark at the end. And that means if the space key is pressed, then it will return a true. It'll say, yes, true, that is pressed. If it's not pressed, then it will return a false. And so that's perfect for up here in our if statement. So if the space key is pressed, then what do we want to do? We want to move our paddle. But we don't want the space key. I think that's a little ambiguous. What we want is the up arrow, I think, right? So let's click this little down, drop down, and you'll see we have the up arrow right here. So let's click that. So when the up arrow key is pressed, then it will run the code inside of here. So we want to move, so that's a motion. So we come up here to the motion area, and we don't actually want the move. What we want to do is we want to change our Y value. So we want to change this value over here. And what change does is it will add, so add or subtract, depends on what we have in here. So changing Y by 10, and what's nice about the blocks is you can actually click the block to see what they do. So I'm going to click this block and watch over here what happens to this Y value. So I click it, see how it added 10, and I click it again, it adds 10. So that's what it does. It continually adds, as this block is executed, it will keep on adding whatever value we have there. So right now it's 10. So that's perfect. Let's throw that in there, and let's hit the go button. Now you can see that this is active, this is running, so it's continually looping, and it's continually seeing if we have the up arrow pressed. So let's press the up arrow and see what happens. So I'm pressing it now, and you see how it moved right up to the top of the screen. So that's exactly what we want. We want it to move up. So let's hit the stop the program from executing. Now we want the same thing, but we want it to move in the down direction with the down key. So I'm going to show you a little trick so we don't have to recode this. It's probably good for you to redo this from scratch, but for the sake of making this a shorter tutorial, we're going to right click the if statement and we have duplicate. Okay, so we duplicated that whole section of the block. So let's drag that in just below, and we're going to see now if the down arrow is pressed. Then what we want to do is we want to change not by a positive value, we want to start minusing from the value. So to go down, we want to have a minus 10, right? So let's just drag this block out so we can see what it does. So we have 210 over here. Now if I click this block, it should go down to 200, and then down to 190, 180, 170. So you can see, and you can see our paddle starting to move down. So that's what it does. So let's hit play or go. Starts executing. It's checking if either one of these things are down. So let's press the down key. Hey, it moves down. That's awesome. And it moves up. Awesome as well. So really cool. You've already got things moving around on the screen. Now, a good practice is to name your sprites and everything so that it's easy for someone else or yourself to see what's going on. So let's rename our sprite, and you can see there's this area here that has the name of our sprite. So in there, we're going to name this paddle 1. So name it paddle 1. And what's nice about Scratch is that as we make our second paddle, we're going to duplicate this. And it's going to automatically increment that 1 to a 2. So let's right click on paddle, click duplicate, and you see now we got something that's named paddle 2. Pretty cool. And since we duplicated it, that means that all of our code blocks that were here are also in this one here. So let's hit play or go, and we'll see what happens when we press up and down. Yeah, so they're both working, but that's not how we want it to work, right? We want one side to move with the up-down arrow, and traditionally with games, a second player will use the W key for moving up and the S key for moving down. So paddle 1 would probably be the logical choice to change, because since the keys on the keyboard are on the left side and paddle 1's on the left side, it's probably good to do that. So see if you can figure that out on your own first. Pause the video and then come back. Okay, so with paddle 1, we have these. If the up arrow is pressed, we can just select a different key. So let's go down and we're going to select the W key. So now if the W key is pressed, then we're going to change paddle 1's Y by 10. Now here with the down arrow, we want to change that to S. Okay, so now whenever it's pressed, it will move the paddle down. Now you notice whenever it says change Y, it's any code that's in here, this is all attached to paddle, like the sprite that's highlighted. So when we're changing the coordinates, it's only changing the coordinates of whatever sprite it's attached to. Okay, so now let's hit play, and we hit the W. One side, paddle 1 goes up, S, paddle goes down. Let's do the up arrow, up, the paddle 2 goes up, and the down arrow, paddle 2 goes down. So that is awesome. You have now the first part of your Scratch project. The next couple of videos are going to be going into these different blocks that we've just done in depth so that you become a master. And then we're going to get into adding a ball to the scene. So I'll see you in the next tutorial.